All right, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the zoning bylaw committee of March 11, 2024. Alphabetical roll call, please.
Clark Brewer here.
Tom Callahan here.
David Farad here.
Mike Dickey here.
If anybody, so just quick update. I've been invited to be to the select board meeting next Tuesday. That actually will be a Tuesday. So I'm going to suggest we also meet next Monday. You saw that I circulated a bunch of things to more than just us, our own board. Got some feedback from Woody, which was very helpful, that I want to address tonight. I've been told by Jean Healy that town council, is to have all of its review of what we've sent so far done by that meeting on the 19th. And I also mentioned that the urgency of speed from to Carolyn when I spoke to her last week, Carolyn Murray. Anyway,
if we get it by that Monday, or even if you don't know, maybe put it on the agenda, because if there's any substantive changes from them, we can talk about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
so tonight, the only one that I really want to get beyond to get to town council is the parking one. Thrown together, it's the last one I've thrown together, but it's also not exactly rocket science either. And gone through the KP diagnosis. Let me first just say about the border zoning provision that we've already sent to town council. Woody had a comment about what setback it applied to, and then I responded again late this afternoon, having looked at it closely, that the definition of the border zone does say it applies to side and rear setbacks. So that addresses his concern. It's not in the measurement itself, but the measurement is there, but it doesn't say. His point was the measurement didn't say which setback it applies to, but the definition of what a border zone is would apply to side and rear. And if you saw my answer I gave him over the weekend, this is not intended to apply to the frontage on the street and the setback to the street. It's really where the commercial properties in the village or harbor abut residential properties. I think in the village in the harbor, that's always going to be a side boundary. In the village, it's possible it could be a rear boundary. So the definition just covers that. So I think we're okay. Let's wait till we hear town council's feedback on it. All right, so let me share a screen. What are we looking at?
they can always tune it up if they think it needs more.
Yeah.
Clear.
I don't think we need to dwell on it. I think I answered Woody's question, and it's so that the issue is to move on and let's deal with this. All right, so this is the parking thing, and so I read the diagnostic, and a lot of the changes, like up here, the headings and terminology was suggested by town council. Now, all this crossed out stuff was our existing table that showed uses and the required number of spaces. And town council thought it was confusing and suggested we tie it into the new uses table of Article 4. So I did that, although I consolidated. I wasn't going to make it pages and pages long. And looking at our existing and bringing it into these terminologies, I translated what we have existing into these different uses. So none of the substantive parking requirements have changed here, except this one, of course, is adding the parking required for the multifamily district. So, if we are going to make changes here. Now, Woody had comments about the restaurant use. I responded to that today. Restaurants, he thought it was an either or for one space per 200 square feet, and it's not. I tried to point out that it's in the commercial district on 3A where you could do 1 space per 200, and I'm all in favor of cutting that out. What we actually require for restaurants is 1 space for each 3 seats, or 1 space for each 6 feet of bench, plus, and this should probably more clearly say plus, 1 space per 80 square feet of public floor area. And that's what he was advocating, a single standard, and I don't disagree. I quickly glanced at, if you saw my email late this afternoon, Hingham, Hull, Norwell, Situate, and Braintree looking for employee parking. But as I'm going through this, I'm glancing at their restaurant things. I think Situate was like 1 space for every 4 seats. So we're a little stricter. So I'm all in favor of this. And I would just say, right here should be the word plus. And then I would take out this exception. And
So for those watching from home, what would be the substantive change as far as for employees?
Nothing would be. This is the existing requirement. Again, I took the existing standards of spaces.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I thought Cassie was looking into this and was going to have some data about, whether we're correct or not. But I really just have taken everything existing. It's just being reorganized to comply to conform to our new Article 4 table of uses. So you can easily go from that table, what's my use, switch to this table, how many spaces you need. Now, so then the other point that Woody pointed out is employee spaces. And I looked at, again, quickly, Hingham, Situate, Norwell, Hull, and then I picked a town like Braintree that's got a lot of commercial space. And none of them deal with employee parking at all. So I must assume that everybody thinks the general calculation sufficiently covers both customers and employees, except that in the case of Hingham, they have a requirement of, for their hotel and motel use only, 1 space for every 2 employees per 2 consecutive shifts. So I guess, an overnight shift they don't care about, but the day and night shifts they do care about. And that was the only one I found. Now, again, it was a quick look. I only looked at 5 towns who, because Woody had suggested looking around, and we can continue to look around. But in the village and I don't think this would be a problem on 3A. And how many restaurants we have on 3A? We don't have a lot, and then there's smaller in size. But in the village and in the harbor, we obviously have constrained parking. And, in the case of the Atlantica redevelopment, they are leasing space for 1 year at this point elsewhere in the town to have for their employees. Novel solution, but what do we do if you don't have that lease? I think, hold on 1 second. Oh, right here, we'll get down to this. By the way, so 7.2, these regulations all exist from our existing bylaw. And Town Council had some suggestion of taking C and K and separating them out as exceptions in this chart. And I don't think we need to add to the chart. But here's 7.2C seems to deal with the idea of having parking away from the premises at issue. And I'm wondering if this does the trick. And maybe just needs to be reworded to be more clearly applicable to employees. So this is basically saying that if a business has a satellite lot, they can use a satellite lot as long as it's within 500 feet in the case of customers and 1,000 feet in the case of employees. Now, I don't know if that's possible for us to impose on the village of the harbor, but I get the first threshold question is, do we need to write a regulation regarding employee parking? We don't have one specifically, and neither do our neighboring towns specifically. I guess that's the first threshold
You
question.
know, honestly, Tom, I mean, all the businesses except for Stop and Shop and Shaw's are so small. It's hard to imagine having an impact of having specific requirement. And those guys have enough parking. But you know, I mean, the real estate agents, you know, there's 10 of them. There's only two at any one time in the shop. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Well,
I mean,
the killer is like with the restaurants, you know, and they had it with the harbor. At Harbor and Village is where the problem really lies. If you were saying, I mean, 3A, there's most places have enough parking, but you know, for the Village and the Harbor, we're already putting 10 pounds in a 5 pound bag sometimes if you especially for restaurants.
sure,
So
right.
so
And if an
you know
employee's gonna be like using that spot for 8 hours and keep patrons from using a restaurant, that's not good.
yeah, I think they came with the one that they were doing in the harbor. I think they found some other offsite to do.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be something to look at that way, but I know what Woody's saying because I did see some of those hearings
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was a big issue. I mean, it was a
Yeah. It was brought up as an issue for that because, um, I mean, the Atlantica redevelopment has the required number of spaces on site for the uses they're proposing. And the overlay project, the hotel project, also does. But what it, you know, for whatever reason, the issue of employees got brought up there. The Village is completely different. None of the restaurants have on-site parking. You know, with the exception, maybe the Red Lion has a little for its function hall, but none of them do. And that's a complete, so, the Village is a completely different animal, and customers are going to use the public lot that's there and on-street parking. And employees, in the Village, they're going to be compelled to do the same thing because none of the hospitality uses in the Village will have on-site parking. They don't now and they won't in the future.
well beyond the businesses, even residents of the downtown Village. I mean, the people who live above French Memories and all the apartments there. Where do you think they park? You know, I mean, so
Well, yeah,
there, there's
I don't know where they park. I know, well, I know there's some parking up in the back, up the road that goes to the back entrance of the church and, up the hill there. But, those buildings pre-exist all of this zoning, all
yeah,
the
it's true
new,
enough. Yeah.
all the new residential projects in the Village, the new ones under the
You have
Village
to account for
bylaw
it. Yes, yes.
are doing on-site parking and are being required to do on-site parking. But the bylaw goes on to say if you are a business and you're within 500, whatever it is, feet or yards of the parking lot, you're allowed to use the parking lot towards your business parking requirements. And so as a result, none of the restaurants, none of the businesses in the Village, or certainly
Yes.
even none of the new ones, have on-site parking and are using the public parking.
No, I understand it. But the issue
So,
we have downtown is we have the uh, grandfathered properties that are using the parking, and then of course,
yeah,
with new ones. So it exacerbates it in every direction. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's a final answer maybe right now, but I think we need to certainly look into it and
yeah,
see if
well,
there's something we can
I,
do.
I don't think it's an issue on 3A because most of the 3A properties now or in the future would have the space to develop enough parking. And as a practical matter, they can't send employees off, way off 3A to expect them to get to work. It's the Village and the Harbor, and I just don't know. I mean, there's no property owner that I'm aware of that owns a property in the village or the harbor that then owns something else nearby. But again, the Atlantica project is a lease situation. They are going to lease from another property that's, a couple of blocks away from the harbor. And it's only for a year. I don't know what happens if the lease isn't renewed, but
I think we
I
have to
just
think
don't,
about
I
this
don't
one.
know, I'm just saying, I don't see as a practical matter how we can regulate employee parking, other than perhaps in the village say it has to be on the satellite lot, that's on Pleasant Street.
We might not be able to take a bite at the apple on this one right now, but I think
Yeah.
it's something to think about, because the problem is that even with the one that they were doing in the harbor, the redevelopment of Atlantica, before they got the lease that they end up getting on a private land, they were looking even on town property, like at the Lightkeepers or places like that, to see if that was available. So if we put in a stringent requirement, it's gonna, even though the town can say no, it's gonna pressurize using other town assets for that parking. See, there's
Yeah.
only so much parking around, so when you squeeze one end of the balloon, the other end goes up. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah, I
might
mean,
we
yeah,
might not want that to be to put that on the menu, so to speak, if that happens. We might have to look at this a little bit further, but like I said, we might not be able to take a bite at the apple now. We might have to look at something later on it.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think this came up, Clark, if you remember when we were dealing with this with the planning board with the Atlantica project, I think the idea that parking on Government Island was discussed. But, it's beyond the zoning bylaw that the town has a public parking lot in the village. Is the town going to make some public parking in the harbor available to the businesses there, particularly at off hours, at night hours when they're operating? And that's a decision that's beyond the zoning bylaw. That's a policy decision for the select board. But I don't think from a zoning aspect, if we were to dictate you have to deal with your employees somewhere, there's no place for us to tell them where to go until something is made available to them. In the village, it's our town parking lot. If in the harbor, the town finds this to be a problem, they're going to have to offer up town parking in the harbor. So, I mean, my thought here is that we're not dealing with this issue at all. At least not in this go round, because I don't know that there is a solution for us to impose on anybody through a bylaw.
I don't think we have a suitable answer to the question mark at this point. So
Yeah.
but I do hear Woody loud and clear, because I remember seeing that, as I said, but I don't think we have a better answer at this point.
Yeah, and I know why he raised it, because the hotel project doesn't exactly deal with it very well either, and is relying a lot on street spaces and and the small public parking lot that's right next to it, near the memorial. It's a problem, but again, I don't think it's a zoning problem that we can solve. I think it's more of a policy and space problem. And it's the same with the village getting crowded on a weekend night if all the restaurants are going gangbusters and the hotel has got a reception. We need more space, and that's not a zoning problem. And there is space available in the village. It's just the cost of developing that space.
The Atlantica project will be less people in that restaurant than was before. I mean, people have lived for a long time with it now, not being a restaurant, but and even when it was Atlantica, but I mean, when it was Hugo's, when they used to do, it was like a clown car. I mean, when they used to do weddings and then have a mid-afternoon service and then a dinner service and then a late service. I mean, there would be cars parked all the way down to the police station on Elm Street, because that's how many people were fitting in that place. So there'll be a lot less than there was years ago. So it's certainly a little bit better than it was.
Okay. Mike, you okay? We're not addressing employee parking at this point?
Yeah, I don't have any problems with that,
Okay. I mean, I don't know if Woody's out there, but I hope he's listening and can understand the thinking about it. but I don't see that he's out there, but, you know, I hope at your next meeting, if it comes up, you just explain to him our thinking on this.
Yeah, I mean, we'd
Yeah.
love to clear up any issues that the zoning board has or could previously had, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we need a solution to fix it. So
Yeah,
if
if
we don't
we
have,
had,
if
if
we
we
don't have a
had some,
solution, then we
right, if
can't
we had
help them.
some place to direct employees to go, we would do it, but we don't, so I don't
Well,
see the
from
point.
from time to time, especially in the summer, the town has sent a policy letter to the village businesses and saying, hey, there's this remote parking lot. If you're going to be parking if your employees are going to park for more than half an hour, make sure they use this remote lot instead of the main lot. But
Yeah.
the policy approach allows you to make adjustments and find solutions for particular peak problems that come up.
Yeah, and, you know, by the way, if town hall moves, you know, at night during, and weekends and heavy restaurant use, there will be spaces associated, you know, there are spaces that are going to be allocated for the residences there, but there'll also be the spaces allocated to the office use, and they could be made available,
Yeah,
you know, in
like
off
with
hours.
your example, employees could be encouraged to park at the current town lot.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or in the village, in the case of the village, yeah, at the current town lot, but that's next to the current town hall as well, because that sits there on nights and weekends. So, yeah, I think that's the way to approach this. So, all right. But let me go back to this section, this C, 7.2C. Does this make sense to anyone to still continue? I mean, it's dealing with the possibility that in any of the commercial districts, 3A, harbor, or village, if an owner has some type of off-site location, they can use that. But it has to be within either 500 feet or 1,000 feet. I mean,
It doesn't make much sense, but
no, is it because nobody has that?
it allows the possibility of businesses to comply if they're in a tight lot area.
Yeah, I suppose, again, if we have somebody who can come up with a leasing situation of somebody's property that's not utilized at nights and weekends,
Right.
you know, I guess this leaves open the possibility. It's just, I don't know of anything that
Yeah, I mean,
actually
if
fits
it
into
leaves if it leaves a release valve for parking, however remote it might be at this point, I think we should
Okay.
leave it in.
Okay.
But I don't know, when did that part of the bylaw come into play? When was that brought in?
Oh, God,
Because
it's probably been there forever.
yeah, so it's probably a specific instance way back when. And it could have been, and I'm just, conjecture, it could have been something between the current ones that we had back then, between Kimball's or who knows, whatever,
Yeah.
because it could have been, because there wasn't much in the village I can think of.
Right.
Um,
So the rest of this, other than the ones that, other than some grammatical changes, and, some of these sections, like just town council recommended moving it somewhere else, but everything's the same. But then the other new thing that was one of town council's comments was about how to deal with handicap spaces, and I think Woody addressed this too. So it's simply a choice of our federally mandated handicap spaces within the count of required spaces, or are they extra that you have to provide? And I believe Woody's email said the current policy, at least, because I don't think we addressed this specifically. Obviously, we don't. We're adding this provision. Is that handicap spaces are part of the count of the required number of spaces. You can do it within your count that you're required to meet. I have no strong
what
feeling.
I've noticed on other zoning bylaws as well, that the handicap spaces are a part of the count,
Okay.
but obviously they take up a lot more room.
Yeah, I mean, what was it at the Atlantica project? They had what, three, I think, or four?
Right. Yeah.
3 or 4 out of their
May have been
21.
two in the corner there.
Yeah. All right. So if nobody's got a problem with that, then we would take all this out. And it may be included within the required number of parking spaces. Okay.
Tom, I gotta run to another meeting and
Are you going to the select board meeting again? Because that's what I found
No.
out you did last week.
no, I'm not going to the select board meeting again. Unfortunately, I didn't get asked anything at the last select board meeting, but they don't have the town hall on their agenda tonight. It's some
Okay.
other executive session thing.
Well, we'll go through this a little bit more, but are you good if we're gonna
And
send out?
maybe I'll try and get back on.
No, but I want to be able to send the parking thing as we further discuss it out to town council, so hopefully.
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna add is go from 9 to 9.5 or 10.
Oh,
with
yeah, well, yeah, your
16
input,
foot drive aisle width,
right,
one-way drive aisle width.
all right, yeah, your input on that needs to come in because Woody criticized, said how old these drawings are.
Yeah, yeah, they are. They look like
All
they're
right,
from
well,
the
I
50s.
gotta tell you, if you can't come back,
No, I'll try and come back.
all right, but just
So
saying.
just
that
a note, Clark, if you leave, you lose quorum.
Yeah, we lose a quorum, so I want to have a vote that we can move this along to.
I got
town
2 more
council.
minutes.
Why don't we do that now?
All right, yeah, all right, subject to the input on parking space size and a further discussion, are we all in favor of moving a parking article to town council for review?
Clark Brewer, aye.
On Callahan, aye.
David
Or if
Frog,
that
aye.
was, I'll second an aye.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
very quickly
Oh,
on.
let Mike Dickey,
Mike Dickey
let
said-
Dickey vote.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I'm struggling with the mute button. But I'm in favor.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mike. My apologies. So Clark, very quickly, you're proposing that spaces would now be 9.5 feet wide?
Well, looks like 9.96. I'd increase it to 10 and then give a one-way drive aisle for diagonal parking of 16 feet.
And what is it now on these sketches, 22 feet?
Well, that's two-way drive aisle. And nobody actually would ever park that way diagonally in both directions. It would be diagonally one way.
All right, all right, if you go and you can't come back, you got to work on these drawings. We got to put in the ones that make
What?
sense.
You want me to do a drawing for free for the town? That sounds good. Okay. I
No,
gotta go.
these parking requirement things, if these things are unrealistic, we get rid of them and we put in the thing, so. All right.
It's not a lot of time to do
Okay,
that.
space, the size of the space is your bailiwick right now.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so
Right.
now, all right, we'll see you later.
We need a motion to adjourn, or what do we need?
Well, I just want to go over this where, we've kind of voted that we're going to move something on. I just want you to be familiar with what we're moving on, so.
Sure.
That's
go
Lost
ahead.
your quorum, though.
I know,
I know.
but I can discuss what we just voted on that we're going to move on to town council. Let me just go over it quickly and then we can finish.
I suppose you could give a conclusion, but that's it. There should be no deliberations.
There'll be no deliberation about it. I just want to explain what's going on here with this section 7.4 because it's new. The judge, again, going back to the top, it's now becomes off-street parking, loading, and access regulations. And for background, 2 years ago, I found the Plymouth bylaw, which had very detailed rules and dimensional requirements for all kinds of roads in their town. I was in their bylaw. In the planning board, we debated doing it as a regulation, and actually it should be a bylaw. So back to this. So I think the judge, in knowing that we were going to try to deal with access, she said, create 7.4. This subsection A is just moved from somewhere else. This subsection, so it's pre-existing. It's just, she's saying, move it to a new access section. B is, just coming from the Plymouth proposal, and a variation of it is just, this is how you access residential lots. You either do it one of three ways. One well, four ways. You have a single car, single house driveway. You have a subdivision road. You have a common driveway, which is now regulated by 4.3B3 since we moved it to Article 4. And then you have the roads that predate the subdivision control law and were not developed as subdivision roads under the subdivision control law, which we have many in town. And that's just, so it's just stating the obvious, but going forward, anything in the future would have to be just 1, 2, and 3. It's either going to be a single car driveway, a common driveway, or a subdivision road. There is no there's no road that would be developed that wouldn't be one of those three. Item 4 here, B4, is just recognizing the roads that were developed, decades and decades ago before subdivision control came into effect, which in Cohasset was some date in 1954, a few months before our bylaw came into existence. All right, so then the proposal, what the Plymouth bylaw dealt with and what the proposal that the planning board was toying around with is what is an adequate road? What should the design standards be? And, a common driveway has design standards, which are referred to here. A subdivision road has design standards. And when the planning board deals with approval not required, one of the things we have to do is, the two things we have to look at is, does the lots that being spun off have adequate frontage? And do they have adequate access on a way that is not illusory? That's the state case law word, illusory. And that can be a number of things of what illusory is, but one of them is dimensions. And what I was attempting to do here with this subsection C is to take out a lot of debate about dimensions and create some presumptions. So if a road was built under the state subdivision control law, however it existed at the time of construction, however it was written, that would be an adequate road for dimensional purposes. And then for the old roads that were not built according to the subdivision control law, I'm suggesting that it should have, for a presumption of adequacy, that it be 16 feet. Now, on the planning board last week, or the last couple of weeks, we've dealt with an A&R application on Hobart Lane, for example. Hobart Lane is not a road built under the subdivision control law. It dates way back long before it ever existed. So you're going to spin off a lot on Hobart Lane. The question is Hobart Lane an adequate road? And there could be other things. It could be, illusory could be a paper street. Illusory could be, there's a case about a guardrail next to a highway. That's illusory access. You can't do that. But for the dimensions, one of the things we confronted with Black Horse Lane is what's safe, what's adequate to handle a larger traffic load by adding more lots to that road. So I'm suggesting 16 feet, but then qualifying with the next sentence that a lesser width may be deemed adequate on a case-by-case basis, but it would require a determination from the fire department, because that's usually, when we're dealing with A&Rs, the main consideration. Can you get a fire truck in and out? So, and then the next section just makes clear that all of this is dealing with is a presumption as to dimensions, and that the other statutory and case law criteria about what's an adequate way or an illusory way would still apply. As long as the judge was suggesting we have a section on access standards, I added this stuff because we should have access standards. She wasn't suggesting, other than having moved this subsection A that already exists about commercial driveways, there was nothing else suggested or added. So that's B and C are my suggestions to, taken from planning board discussions of 2 years ago, based on a Plymouth bylaw. So, again, we're not going to discuss this. We're going to throw this out there to town council and see what they think. And then perhaps town council can flesh out more of what they were thinking when they suggested that we create this new subsection 7. So that's just the only other new material. So with that, I'll see that this gets off to town council, and hopefully we'll have an answer to them on this one as well as the others in time for that selectmen's meeting. And then next week, we will really need to focus on the other Article 5 changes that we've been discussing.
I am going to, just so you know, folks, I'm gonna be on vacation next week and out of town, so I won't be around. So hopefully Clark will not be, will be around and.
Yeah, and
But
Jack
form.
and Jack and Cassandra, we're gonna have to have all hands on deck for it, so. I will tell you that I have reached out to the engineers in my building to see if I can get a quickie primer, however you call it, on our FAR. And how one translates traditional square footage into FAR so that we can explain it to people and what the impact would be as compared to what we have today. Anyway, so, all right, well, then with that, I guess we'll move to adjourn. Somebody want to second it?
I'll, so move.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, all in favor of adjournment? Tom Callahan, aye.
David Frog, aye.
Mike Dickey, aye.
Okay, great. So thank you, and we'll plan for a meeting next week, and we'll have to just make sure we have a quorum for it. So because it's getting to crunch time. The planning board hearing has been noticed for April 3rd. It'll probably be continued into April 10, but that's when we have to have our Section 5 hearing. So we got to make some real quick decisions on the Article 5 changes.
So realistically, just a note on the scheduling, yes, Monday meeting next week. But also we realistically have to have, I realize that town council is going to come back with maybe some recommendations, but we should have draft language into the clerk's office by early next week, like Tuesday,
All right.
which obviously it can be changed after that.
Yeah, no, I
but
know.
we gotta have something
That's what I
file.
tried to say to Carolyn, that the time pressures, even though it's a June meeting, the time pressures are now, it's crunch times. I mean, thank God we have some drafts, some draft language written. So we have
Yep.
something to give town council, to the clerk. So. All right, thank you all. I wasn't expecting us to end this quickly, but that's, it is what it is. Mike, enjoy your vacation, Mike, and
Thanks, I appreciate it.
all right, and as I get things back from town council or from the state on the housing choice, I'll circulate it and make sure everybody has it.
All right.
All
Good night,
right,
all.
thank you. All
Bye.
right.